I'd like to welcome everyone to our Satsang. My name is Nayaswami Devarshi. A great joy to be here in Delhi, seeing many old friends and seeing some friends I have yet to meet here by looking around. I'm here this weekend with Brahmachari Jamal from our Ananda Kandala Monastery. And this topic here today is about the inner spirit and going within and the importance of it. And I'll talk about that, about how to do it, and about how to awaken the intensity that Swami Kriyanandaji is talking about. Because in the end, this intensity is everything. If we have this intense desire for God, for freedom, that's the fuel, the food, that's the sort of the coin that will get us there. And the more that we can work on that, the more that we will want to meditate. It won't be a chore anymore. We won't have to force ourselves into the discipline. And you will find over time that the more you meditate, and that the more you meditate deeply and well, it's not just punching the clock and getting in the hours, but the more that you meditate, the more that you change. It's just very, very, very simple. It works like mathematics. And I can't say how that works. It's just a combination of things. Even just the simplest meditation techniques. Studies show that just 12 minutes a day for 8 weeks makes measurable changes in the brain and makes people have a better outlook on life, to see things more clearly, the tests that they do. Meditation really changes us more than anything that you can do. So really, if you're not meditating, seriously consider meditating, getting established in it, learning the practices here. If you are meditating, always be thinking of how to do it longer and or more deeply and with more intensity. And if you can somehow revolve your life around this, you will find that everything in your life changes for the better. As Swami Kriyanandaji in this reading points out, meditation is not an escape from reality. It's not. There's a lot of misconceptions about meditation, probably because we've all met someone who meditates a lot and they're really fuzzy-headed and their head is in the clouds and they're not very practical or necessarily even a really good person. And this is not meditation that they're practicing. True meditation always bears fruits. It always changes people. And start where you are. This is the beauty of it, is that if we just start where we are, accept who we are, where we are, and take one step at a time, this long adventure of a lifetime of meditation will change you beyond any expectations that you might have even had, even the highest expectation. And I've seen this again and again and again. It changes us from the inside out. It makes us better people. It makes us a better business person, a better parent, a better friend. Everything in our lives will be affected by this. It also touches the people around us in amazing ways. Again, I've seen this so many times. I was just thinking of a friend of mine in America. She's a serious, lifelong Kriya yogi, and her husband was not really interested in these things at all. And he was a very successful businessman, a very high-level management in a multinational company, and a good person. And she felt that the lack of a spiritual partner was keeping her back. And so she asked Swami Kriyanandaji one time, I'm thinking that it would be better if I left my husband so that I could pursue spiritual things more. And she was a very sincere person. She just has a lot of integrity, and she was not trying to escape at all. She was trying to find God, and she was asking a good question from her perspective. And Swami Kriyanandaji just looked at her and said, is he a good man? And she said, yes, he is. And he said, stay with him. And what's funny about this, these are dear friends, that 10 years later, not only is he now a Kriya yogi and meditates and takes seclusions, and he even was just appointed as an acharya at one of our centers in America. And I believe it was her influence of just meditating daily, patiently, loving, serving, giving, because she's a mother raising children and has her own career. So she's not like a lifelong yogi. That's all she does, like almost everyone involved with Ananda. And so you'll find that meditation somehow in some way starts to permeate every part of our life. And again, you can start wherever you are. There's just a lot of misconceptions again that spirituality is shown by how big the Rudraksha beads are that you're wearing and how many malas you've got piled on top of you and what you are doing outwardly. And really, it's who you are inwardly. And that can, outwardly, it can be anywhere in this world. There's all these beautiful children of the light here today, and every one of us is in a different situation, a different circumstance, a different position in life, a different time in life. But wherever God has put us, the possibility of finding freedom and bringing meditation, these practices, into our lives can free us even where we are right now. It's just, I've seen it again and again. People think I need to escape to the Himalayas, or I need to escape where I am right now. It's my conditions that are keeping me from God. It's my family, it's my job, it's my spouse, and maybe sometimes that might be true. But even to make that next step, we still have to change ourselves inwardly in some way. Yoganandaji's most advanced disciples, outwardly, his most advanced disciple was a multi-millionaire businessman who just had a very demanding career. And just, again, wherever you are, accept yourself, who you are right now, where you are, and just start taking those steps. There was one disciple of Yoganandaji who, this is a good example of how meditation can change you. He was an alcoholic, very rough character, but he had a good heart. I think he was a construction worker. And Swami Kriyanandaji describes him, just how rough he was. He describes him as visiting the Guru. And in those days in America, and even nowadays, people didn't know how to relate to a God-realized master. And he certainly didn't. This man would sit with Yogananda, and he'd lean back in the chair and put his feet up on the table. And Swamiji says that one time he was there, and this man even started telling dirty jokes to the Guru, to Yogananda. And he said that Yogananda just laughed and laughed, and it's because he saw this man's heart. The man's heart was very loving, was very giving, and Yogananda just embraced him as his disciple. And through the practices of meditation, through attunement and receptivity to the help of the Guru, this man changed and he grew, starting from where he was at. So it doesn't matter where we start. It matters only the intensity of this desire for freedom, for God, developing over time the purity of our hearts. And even that, a pure heart, yes, it's very important. But we all have perfectly pure hearts deep inside. It's not that our hearts have changed. It's just only that they've been covered by mud of desire and attachment. And these things naturally, over time, simply fall away when we meditate. It works like mathematics again. The more you meditate, and the more you meditate deeply and in the right way, what happens is, over time, again and again and again, every time we sit down to meditate with sincerity and with this desire, we are offering ourselves and placing ourselves into the light of God. And that light starts to transform us and change us naturally, easily, and just over time, inexorably, without fail. This is the process of meditation. And again, I've seen it. I've been practicing these things for 45 years almost, and I have seen it works without fail in myself. I think it's a miracle. And people ask me sometimes, have you ever seen miracles? And I say, yeah, I see one every morning when I wake up and I look in the mirror. I look at this person who's so different than he was 40 years ago. It's miraculous, the changes. And it's for everybody. This is the whole idea that anybody starting right where you are right now, if you're not meditating at all, just do 5 minutes a day, or 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. Better to get a strong but basic practice going. And over time, what happens is you'll find that you enjoy meditation more and more, and you want to do more and more. And so just work step by step, longer and deeper. That by itself is not going to change us, because we can't meditate for an hour a day and then go out and be mean to everybody and just think that our spiritual life is only in that 1 hour. Yes, it will change us still in that regard, but the whole picture is also very, very important. Swami Kriyanandaji, I think it was, told a story of a very saintly man who was starting to get a very strong meditation practice. And he was meditating, I think, for about 4 or 5 hours every morning. And he would wake up very early. He had a job and a family, but he would wake up with his alarm clock like 3 or 4 in the morning and meditate. And his reputation for saintliness was starting to become well known. And finally, even Satan heard about this saintly man. And he sent one of his minions, one of his assistants, to go check out this man. And he came back to Satan and said, yeah, this man, he gets up at 3 in the morning, meditates, chants to God all morning long, meditates deeply, and he's starting to really become saintly, and we're getting worried about this. And Satan called his best assistant, and he said, we have to do something about this guy. He's getting close to finding God. And so this assistant went there, and he had this brilliant idea. And he had the idea, eventually he tried a couple of things, but I'm trying to make the story a little bit shorter. And so he tweaked the man's alarm clock. And so it either woke him up really late or didn't wake him up at all. And the man woke up really late and saw his watch and jumped out of bed and had to run to work, and he wasn't able to meditate. And so he just apologized all day long to God and said, tomorrow I'll try harder, and I love you, and forgive me, and I'm still with you. And so next morning, this assistant did the same thing. And then all day long, again, the man was just talking to God and giving his love to God. And finally, the man went back, the assistant to Satan went back to Satan and said, well, I think I've done my task. And Satan said, no way. I'm hearing this man talking to God all day long now. Before he would just meditate for 4 hours, and then he would go to work and forget about God, and now he's even becoming more and more saintly through this. And you've really messed this up. And he may have fired that assistant. I don't know what he did. I guess he couldn't throw him into hell because that's where he lives. But anyways, meditation in a spiritual life, step by step, starting no matter where you are. And again, no matter how bad your habits are, desires, all of these things. Again, Yogananda had many disciples like this alcoholic man and so many others who had so many issues. And again, I have seen it without exception. Start where you are right now. Take one step at a time. But think in terms of working towards longer, deeper meditation and God contact over the course of a lifetime. It's a marathon race. It's not a sprint. But you'll find if you just take it in that spirit of step by step moving forward, you will find that you will make great progress in one lifetime. Now, the key that I have seen is cultivating and increasing this desire, the desire for God, or the desire for freedom, the desire for peace, the desire for release from stress. And the goal isn't to get rid of all of our desires, because that's a negating approach. As renunciates in the Ananda Sevaka order of renunciation, the renunciation that Swami Kriyanandaji gave us and taught was renouncing the ego in a positive way, not in a negating way. And it's not about what you don't do, it's about what you do and what you give to God. And he called it a bliss-affirming renunciation rather than a life-negating renunciation. So it's not about getting rid of this desire, getting rid of that, don't do this, don't do that. In America, in the Deep South, where there's a very conservative religious practices, you'll be holy if you don't drink, you don't dance, and you don't smoke. I think those are the 3 things, and maybe there's a few more, but it's all about don't do this, don't do that. And one time somebody asked Yoganandaji, if I get rid of all desires for anything, and maybe even get rid of so many desires that I just commit suicide and just leave without any desires, will I be free? And Yogananda just laughed and said, no, no, no. He said, you have to cultivate a positive desire for God and divine freedom. And so don't worry about worldliness, attachment, and desires that we currently have. Think more in terms of starting over time to increase and cultivate this desire for freedom and this desire for God. Because every desire must be satisfied, and the stronger desires are satisfied more intensely and more quickly. And so if we work on this desire over time, then inevitably and even quickly that desire will be fulfilled. And you will find that you want to meditate more. It becomes enjoyable to meditate. And so work more in terms of what you give rather than what you renounce. And in terms of giving, I'm talking just about giving to others, selflessly serving others. Try to see meditation as a giving, even a giving to God, a giving to the light, a giving of yourself into the light. And if you think in those terms, this is the ego renunciation that Swami Kriyanandaji talked about. And it's very positive. It's this reading today about alertness and energy and enthusiasm. This is what Ananda practices, is this high energy. It's a high energy environment. And we have a monastery where there's 7 of us monks serving and living together, and it's a high energy environment. It's not this quiet, sweet devotees tiptoeing around, whispering the name of God all day long. We're making phone calls all day long. Seva is very intense and active, and we do these affirmations from this book every day to start our morning seva, and it's just a lot of positive energy, joy, enthusiasm, and it is this giving of ourselves into the light in every moment that we can, in a very enthusiastic, energetic way. And when you do that, that starts to attract divine help. It starts to awaken more and more of this desire for God. I'll read something that Swami Kriyananda said about this. And this also speaks to those who might think, oh, I have a long ways to go. I have all these desires and attachments, and it's difficult, and look where I am now, and look where those great masters are, and it seems really, really far away from where I am here to where they are there. Get that thought out of your heads really quickly, and this will help you, I think. This is Swami Kriyanandaji. Most people have no conception of how long it takes to reach the point of being on the spiritual path, or even wanting truth. It takes, as Yogananda put it, very, very, very good karma even to want to know God. But once you're on the path, you are virtually liberated. Granted, it can take a few incarnations, but if you have the desire for God, that desire has to be fulfilled. All desires have to be fulfilled. Once you are consciously aware of the desire for God, the most deep-seated desire of all, it will guide you bit by bit over many detours to final realization. And then he also says, remember, as long as your desire for God is sincere, it will be He Himself who gives you the strength you need. And so work on cultivating and building that desire most of all. It is what is going to free us. And satsang and being in, when Master said you have very, very, very good karma, even to want to know God in truth, that means that right now in this room, there is a lot of really, really, really good karma here. And that really, what I'm saying is spend time with people like this, people who want truth, who want God, because that magnetism will rub off on you. Yoganandaji said that a piece of charcoal doesn't become red by itself. It has to be next to another red-hot charcoal. And just, you'll find that when our own enthusiasm wanes and starts to go away, if we just find a bunch of red-hot charcoals like we have in this room right now and kind of rub up against them and get near them, it starts to reawaken that which is already in us. It has never gone away. That flame, that red-hot part is there all the time. It's part of who and what we are. But sometimes it just needs to be awakened by the presence of others. So satsang, meditation, just environment, and just coming back. This is why regular meditation is important. Even when it's difficult and it's hard, and everyone goes through these periods where meditation is really, really dry or difficult, but just coming back every morning, every evening, eventually you break through. Eventually that dryness and the mechanicalness or the boredomness of it, you finally start waking up. And just the sincere effort really, as Swamiji says here, attracts God's strength to help us get through it. So I'm going to conclude by reading a poem by Yogananda ji called Banks of Eternity. He's not talking about banks with money. I think he's talking about the banks like of the river. At last I found the banks of eternity, and there I sat musing to plunge, swim, and melt in that ocean of immortality. Melting myself within myself, I became the ocean of luminous light. All dream waves of many incarnations have melted into the sea of one flame. All rivers of my desires have become one vast sea of desire for God. The loves of many lives have commingled to become one cosmic love. The joys of many centuries have gathered together and become the all-pervading joy. Beloved of my heart, since thou hast created me, it is in thy power to release at once the atoms of my body into the freedom of thy light. No longer do I want to play with this wave of life or with other waves of lives. Bless me that I may expand this soul into thy spirit, expand my wisdom into thy wisdom, and expand my bliss into thy bliss. I, the tiny wave of life, must become the ever-expanding ocean of immortality. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.